onion, tomato, cucumber, citrus, garlic. Cool, we're gonna toss that up. We're also gonna add some pepper and some salt. The salt's gonna help pull out all the moisture. And then we're also gonna add some oil. You can use any oil you want, really. Blended oil, canola, vegetable, extra virgin, olive oil, it doesn't matter. Just to make sure everything's coated. Just for cleanliness, I'll cut over the pan I'm gonna put my meat in, just to kind of keep my workspace clean, and then I don't have to worry about getting blood everywhere. We got these nice skirt steaks, right? Super thin, they're super lean, and it's gonna feed a lot of people. All this fat that's on there, it's perfectly fine. You can take it off, you can leave it on. I always prefer to leave it on. Kind of makes it a little bit heartier. And then we're just gonna toss it. All right, so all these flavors in here are basically just gonna like seep into the steak. You'll notice that it'll start to, the longer you let it sit, the more discolored you might think the steak is. It'll start to get like a little more white and everything like that. That's really just the citrus and the acid starting to break down the meat, tenderizing it, and softening it up, but also cooking it, chemically cooking it. If you've ever heard of ceviche, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can do the same thing with meat as well. So I'm gonna get rid of these gloves now, and we're gonna set this to the side and just kind of like let it do its thing. Earlier, we separated our eggs into whites and yolks. Here we go, saving, being sustainable about it, right? Zero waste besides the shells, but that's okay, you can compost those. What we're gonna do with this is make an egg-based sauce, which is a hollandaise. It's essentially butter and egg yolk. Traditionally, you see them on steak and eggs Benedict. So we have our butter, we have our egg. There was also heavy cream in our box too, which if all else fails, we can always use the heavy cream. For me, I get really tired after eating a lot of red meat, especially when it's got a lot of salt on it, a lot of flavor on it. Here we are getting butter and egg yolk, and we're putting that on top of the red meat. How do we cut all that richness, all that fatness? We're gonna use acid. So we're gonna grab one of these lemons, and at the very end, we're just gonna squeeze like a dash of lemon juice right into our hollandaise. That acid from the lemon is basically just gonna cut the rich fattiness from this hollandaise. So we're gonna grab our pot. So my egg yolks, I'm just gonna dump right in there. I'm gonna try this the less traditional way and bring it all together in a pot. So in our pot, we're just gonna make sure all your eggs or your yolks are broken, so it's a smooth sauce, instead of just trying to have 3 separate egg yolks. So once you have that, we can set that aside. This recipe calls for 12 tablespoons of butter, 8 tablespoons, bam, half cup. So we're gonna need one more. So it's gonna be 16. So this is really nice too. We did leave the butter out, so it's soft, which is even better, because it'll be easier to do. It'll also be faster. Once we're done with this hollandaise, we can just leave it to the side, but you do want to do that pretty much right before you do the steak. So after we do the hollandaise, we're gonna go straight into the steak. You can cook that many different ways. You can pan-sear it, or you can grill it. We're gonna pan-sear it. Traditionally prefer pan-seared steak anyways, because you're crusting the entire steak versus just the grill marks. So right now I'm just cutting the butter in half, because this was 8 ounces, or 8 tablespoons, sorry. And this was 8, so it's gonna give us 12. Okay, we're also gonna need water. So it's gonna be about 3 tablespoons of water. Feel free to eyeball this. The water is just gonna impact your sauce in terms of consistency. It's either gonna be, if you have too much water, it's gonna thin it out. If you have not enough, it's gonna be a little thicker, and that's fine too. Okay, so this is definitely more than 3 tablespoons. So, like I said, we can eyeball it. So we can just grab a regular kitchen spoon, and we just go 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, and 3, and all of that is in there. Low and slow is the name of the game here. Anything with egg, and you're cooking and not making scrambled eggs, low and slow. So we're gonna pretty much try and go as low as we can on this guy. You'll notice that this butter is just gonna slowly melt in with the egg. It's gonna be liquidy. And then once the butter is melted, what it's gonna do, the whole sauce is gonna be hot, and that's gonna start cooking that egg. And that's really when you wanna start watching it, because you don't want scrambled egg, right? So I'm just kind of like mashing the butter in there. I'm just trying to take some time off of it from the cooking. So at this point, I'm just gonna kind of let it be and then get ready to start working on this steak. All right, I got my big Warhammer out here. This is the biggest saute pan we have in house. We got smaller ones, you can use that too. You come over this meat, so we clean it, right? It was a big, long strip. We can always cut it in half. You want to serve half, cut it in half, that's fine. We'll grab the croutons. These are definitely good to go. You can hear them crunch, everything like that. It's solid. So we're actually just gonna let these cool off. So we'll just put them off to the side here. All right, so now that it's all melted, the side of this pot got a little too warm, so we did end up scrambling it a little bit on the edges. We can always strain it out afterwards. We're also gonna add a little salt, right? Everything that's rich, heavy, fat in it is gonna need some salt. So we're not gonna over salt it though, because the lemon we can use in place of salt. Citrus is very good for that. While I'm over this hollandaise and just stirring, you'll notice that saute pan, I'm just blasting on high heat. I just wanna get that really hot. Those skirt steaks are really thin, so they don't need to cook for a long time. So you can cook this thing super fast, high heat, 1 minute on each side, and you're good. Because if you end up cooking skirt steaks on a low heat or a medium heat, you'll have to cook them all the way through to get any color on them. And there's not a lot of fat and marbling in skirt steak, so it ends up being dry. You don't want that, you don't want it dry. Making sure we get all the sides so we just don't cook egg on the side and curdle it. You'll notice it thickening up as it gets hot, right? Pull up your whisk or your spatula, right? And you can just run your finger and see how it runs. So this is almost there, this is almost done. So I'm actually just gonna kill that heat. And you can see when you whisk it too, when I move it, you can see the bottom of the pan behind it, right? Because it's thickening up. So that guy's done. So we're just gonna set him aside. We'll leave him right there. And we're gonna taste it just to make sure it's good. And to see how much lemon we need. If it's too much salt in there, then you don't wanna use lemon. But that's actually really good. Just gonna slice this lemon in half. Actually, we're just gonna slice the end of it off like this, and we can save this for later. That way, there's no seeds in it, so you don't have to worry about straining it, and we can just, bam, squeeze it right into the hollandaise when we're ready for that. Skirt steak time. Like I said, these are long, skinny, and you can kind of cut them to whatever size you want. There's no right length or wrong length. I mean, we can cut a size that big, and we can use this, or we can leave the whole thing and cover our entire grill. But just out of easiness, we'll go ahead and we'll just do this. Saute pan's super hot. You can take it off the heat. You can still feel the residual heat. It's still smoking. You know it's good to go. I got my tongs here. So turn the heat off. We'll put oil in the pan. You want to oil the pan after the pan's hot, so you don't just delay the process, and you'll end up burning the oil that way before it's hot enough to actually sear something real hard. Take it off the heat, use our oil, put it on here. So oil smoking, it's kind of on. We're gonna lay away, and we're just gonna get a nice hard sear on it, and we're just gonna keep cooking it. Probably for about a minute or so until it's golden brown. You never really want to touch it once it starts cooking. You just let it be, right? Let it be, let it do its thing. You know, if you ever want to check it, you just pull the corner up. You can start seeing it get nice and brown. A good way to see how far along it is always look at the edges, right? These little tiny edges that are kind of sticking out, there's not much to them. So if you notice those browning, then the rest is slowly gonna follow, right? The last to brown is always gonna be the center, generally. So now that we got this nice golden brown edge on the corners here and the little end pieces, I know we're pretty much there. So we're gonna pick it up and we're gonna flip it, right? And we're gonna lay away. So closest side to you down first, all the way to the back. All right, that one's doing really well. So we're just gonna add this tiny guy as well, and we're gonna cook that. We're gonna let it sit. This guy, maybe about 30 seconds to a minute, and it'll be done. All right, we're gonna pick it up because we saw the corner starting to go, but we can probably go for another 30 seconds or so. This one, right, we'll pick up corner up, see how it's doing. Definitely needs a little bit more time. I'm gonna center the pan so that guy's right over the heat. And then this one we're gonna let rest. So I'm just gonna pick it up, put it on this plate, and let it rest before we slice into it. So you can just hang out there and cool down for a little bit while we finish this one, right? Golden brown, closest side to me first, and then we're gonna push it away so it splatters that way. If you have any leftover garlic and or butter, we can always put it right in there on top. And what we're gonna do is baste it. We're gonna leave the garlic on the top just so it doesn't burn. We'll tilt the pan so the steak is still over the heat, and we'll pool all the butter over here, and we're just gonna put it on top like that. All right, we'll just scoop them up. If he falls off, we'll scoop them up, put them back on there. It's kind of just giving it some more richness, you know, stuff like that. Just take the garlic off. I'll put the spoon in there so it doesn't slide off. And we'll let this half rest with that guy. Put this down here. And save them for later. And we got our steak here. Sauce, hollandaise, right behind us, ready to go. We let them rest, A, so we can touch them with our hands so they're not scorching hot and then burn ourselves. But two, also, it kind of just lets all the heated liquid in the middle kind of just move around and evenly cook it. As far as slicing goes, you can see the grain, the pattern of the steak, and it's all going left to right. That means we're gonna cut left to right and make, you know, cross it, go diagonal. This will make it seem more tender of a steak, softer and everything like that. If you end up cutting it this way, it's fine too, but it just won't feel as tender, you know, it won't break its part as fast in your mouth. So we're just gonna go right across, make nice little strips. And you'll see I'm kind of cutting it at an angle almost to make kind of like slanted slices. You can kind of see what temperature you had. There's a bunch of reasons. This one's got all the butter on it. You can see the butter browned a little bit, which is perfect because it looks like it has a nice caramelization on it. This one definitely has a lot more flavor into it from this, just from that little technique of butter and whatever garlic scraps you have, if you have any left over from your marinade. Again, the grain's going this way, so we're gonna cut right across it. We're gonna go at that knife at kind of like a 45-degree angle or so. Scoop our steak up. It's called shingling. So we're gonna shingle our slices just like a rooftop. A little bit of salt on top if you need it. Sometimes you don't, sometimes you do. And then we're gonna go back to our sauce. If you did curdle it a little bit, looks like I may have left it over the pilot. That's all right. You can always strain it. Doesn't matter. Squeeze a little bit of this lemon in here, put that off to the side, take that bit of salt off the plate, and then we're just gonna spoon this right on top. Chef Nick here. That was me thinking inside the box. You know, we had our salad, our entree, and then our semi-Fredo for dessert. And here I am challenging other chefs in the Valley of Phoenix to think inside the box.